Hey y'all, it's Melissa here at Twin Oaks Family Farm in rural Southeast Ohio, USA. Our videos are usually about chickens, but in this one I want to do a little update and catch up on the dazzling dahlias. This little flower bed of all dahlias has just turned out beautiful. I had no prior experience at all with dahlias. Had a local friend here who raises them, and she's very skilled at raising flowers. She's a skilled florist and has great decorating intuition. So she offered to share dahlia tubers with me, and I was like, sure thing, I'll have to learn as I go, but I'd love to have some dahlia tubers. So we actually had a flower bed that was just kind of an impromptu project during 2023. Wanted to build a little raised bed, and we had been putting, actually we have a little poultry farm. We'd been putting, anytime we had some flock loss from the meat chicken flock, we would bury those carcasses into this flower bed. We've used some old chicken bedding in it, and we amended it with like a planting mix, soil mix from our favorite feed mill, Beverly Feeding Equipment in Beverly, Ohio. They handle Pro Mix, so we added that to it. So this bed was just like a clean slate. We had, I think, some vegetables in it late in 2023, but cleaned it up that fall, and then kind of had a clean slate this spring to do something in it. So this was perfect. And she, my local friend here, she gave us, oh, it seemed like tons, but it's probably 2 or 3 dozen dahlia tubers that came from her plantings last year. So she gave those to us, gave me some instructions. This was actually the very last week of May, which is kind of late here for getting them in the ground. I've learned that as soon as you get your last frost in the spring, you can go ahead and put these dahlia tubers in the ground and give them all of your growing season to grow. And then at the end of the season, I believe, when you get your first frost, you need to get them dug up then, like shortly after your first frost, which for us here in rural Southeast Ohio, USA, is typically by mid-October. For several years, I kept track of the first frost date in the fall, and it was like October 10th for multiple consecutive years. So the family teases me that, are we gonna have the first frost on October 10th? They tease me about that every year. I'll never ever live it down, but that is generally pretty accurate for our area. So early to mid-October, I would expect to have a first frost, and that's I think, if I'm learning the correct information, that's when I'm going to need to be prepared to clean this bed up and get in there and dig the tubers up out of the soil, and then you store them in a dry place, and probably a dry, cool place, I believe, and probably away from light, I would imagine. And then you'll have them for the next spring. You wait till your last frost, and then you put out your dahlia tubers, and they'll have that growing season again. So let's take a look at them. So keep in mind, this is August 14th, 2024. And like I said, these tubers did not go in the ground until the last week of May 2024. So they had all of June, all of July, and we're about mid-August. And we've actually had enough blooms from here that I've already cut some a couple of times and made small vases with them and some other mixed flowers. But this is a beautiful color. It's almost like a burgundy. So some neat things that I've learned about dahlias is that they are native to Mexico, native to Central America, and as far back as the Aztec civilization, they were actually used for a food source. The tuber was eaten. So I'll have to look it up, but it appears that the tubers in general are probably edible. You need to research that. Don't take my word on it, but it is known that the Aztec civilization did use them for a food product, in fact, and used the tubers. And I read that it's known to taste somewhat like a combination of radishes and potatoes. So can't quite imagine the taste, would have to taste it to know. There's another one that's like this beautiful burgundy. And they open up more and more too. We get more of that center opened up. I read that each, what looks like a petal, each one of those is actually its own flower. Each floret is actually its own flower. So that's really neat. But back to the Aztec civilization using it as food. So that's one reason that when these were first classified, they were apparently first classified as a vegetable because of the tuber generally being edible. Now this is a really pretty color. It's like a blush pink. And it almost, in person, it has kind of a salmon tip to the florets, but gorgeous. Gorgeous. There's another one gonna start. Let me get around from another angle. But the greenery is beautiful. The plants have grown in, very lush. We see a lot of bloom setting. So far, we've been very fortunate. I haven't had disease or pest issues that I'm aware of. You know, and there's, as we're down in the soil, like kind of giving you an idea. And so I think there we've actually got a tuber somewhat exposed right here. Okay, that one must have leaned over. We've got the tuber somewhat exposed, but I wanted to get over here kind of a different angle. We had another pretty flower. There's one that's set bloom. It's gonna be blooming soon for us. Okay. Here's a real pretty one. Let me try to get to it. So, along with some of that information about it having been considered a food product, kind of a starch, the tuber, kind of like a potato. Likewise, the Aztecs also used these as kind of, I guess what we would interpret as a precursor to insulin to help treat diabetes-like health conditions. So that's really, really interesting. But they do originate, it's going to be something bloom there. They do originate from Mexico, Central America. They're growing really well here. So what I'm learning about them is like 6 hours of sunlight daily they need. They need well-drained soil that filters well, drains well. And like I said, apparently you don't put the tubers out till after danger of frost is passed in the spring, and then you want to dig them up later in the fall. I think after the first frost, to make sure they don't get a hard frost that they have to endure, and then you just store them properly and they're ready to go again the next season. So here's one just starting. Let's see, are we seeing it? There it is. And so it's really cool that like all that is going to just unfurl, and all that is going to then, you know, look like this one. So really, really beautiful flowers. Really grateful that my friend shared them with me. And I'm not a super gardener, so I feel like if I can raise these from tubers, probably anybody can. So if you have the opportunity to raise dahlias and you love florals, I wholeheartedly thumbs up, say go for it. And I'm going to try to keep learning more about dahlias. I think they were named for a Swedish botanist whose last name was spelled D-A-H-L, and that's where dahlia came from. I think they were named by another professional, but named after this Swedish botanist whose name is reflected in the dahlia name of the flower. So we have some beautiful shades. We did a short highlighting a vase that we made with some cut dahlias and some cut roses, so that'll be on YouTube as well. And just wanted to show you how the dahlia bed is doing. Let me know in the comments if y'all raise dahlias, if you like gardening. But I'm just amazed. There's going to be a lot of flowers on these. Like here's one starting, here's one starting, here's one starting, here's one starting. Aren't they going to be beautiful when all this has so many more blooms on it. So please join us again at Twin Oaks Farm Poultry, and we hope that you do something every day, at least one thing every day, that makes you smile.